Good evening. This is CTV News for Thursday, July 7th. I'm Patricia Vallone.
And I'm Denise Douglas. So glad you could join us this evening. One happened in Louisiana and the other in Minnesota, both this week. Two unarmed black men were shot and killed by police. And again, the nation is questioning law enforcement and its use of force against people of color. Alton Sterling was killed outside a convenience store, and Philando Castile was shot during a traffic stop. Protests have popped up around the country. Locally, the NAACP's Bob Ross says his phone has been ringing off the hook with people concerned and angry about the latest killings. Here's some of what he had to say about all of this.
It's a tragedy. It caught me off guard. The first one was bad enough to look at a man being shot at point blank range. Then to see a second one in less than 48 hours, I believe, the same thing. And it sends a tone that is unacceptable in the black community. And so we have to address this. What are we looking for? How to fix this problem?
The officers involved in Alton Sterling's shooting in Baton Rouge have been placed on administrative leave. Meanwhile, one officer has been placed on paid leave in connection with Philando Castile shooting in Falcon Heights outside of Minneapolis. These recent police-involved shootings have many in our area concerned about how to interact when confronted by law enforcement.
And former president of the Prince George's Fraternal Order of Police, Percy Alston, is joining us now with some advice. So tell us a little bit, give us an officer's perspective of what to do when they're confronting a member of the public.
Well, I think that the biggest thing and what I always focus on is communication. And if we treat each other with courtesy and respect, and it's a two-way street. It's for the officer towards the citizen and the citizen towards the police officer. For the citizens to treat a police officer like they were their pastor or their dentist or doctor, they would give them that respect. And that communication line can be very positive, and then that interaction can be handled successfully. During a traffic stop, communicate. When you're driving, you're supposed to have your license, registration card, and insurance card. Have those things. Don't make sudden movements. And remember that an officer initiating a traffic stop at night may be nervous or concerned about the passengers inside. It's difficult to see with tinted windows, and people make movements. They're reaching under the seat, reaching, in pockets, things like that. We don't want to see that. Those officers want to go home at night as well.
Just to piggyback on that, there's something floating around on social media right now, a quote that's being posted and reposted. It says, just so I get it correct, telling a black man to respect police so they don't get killed is like telling a woman to dress appropriately so they don't get raped. Do you see this as something similar?
Well, I don't think the police should tell people how to act. It's about us working together, creating that dialogue, having that communication so we know how to work with each other. One of the things I'm very critical of is on any given weekend in a major city in this country, dozens of black men are killed by other black men, and there is no outcry. Where's the outcry then? Not just when a police officer is involved with a citizen. We need to have that outcry to reduce crime everywhere.
And you were talking about communication, and obviously you aren't part of the police department there and aren't privy to all of the information. But from what we understand from other news reports, there was communication because Philando told the officer he had a weapon and he had a permit to carry it and so forth. And even when you try to communicate, are there other steps that you need to take or that can prevent tragedies?
Well, once again, it's about what that officer knows, or what he can only act based on what he sees, what he knows. I can't really comment on what happened in Minnesota and Louisiana. I don't have all of the facts there. I can just talk about, we give a sort of a broad situation. If you were armed, had a gun, had a permit, and you let the officer know that you're armed, you don't want to move at all. If you've got that gun on your person. My suggestion, and I'm a strong proponent of the Second Amendment, is if you're going to carry a gun in your vehicle, have it in the glove compartment, have it in the trunk. So that way you're not reaching somewhere. You can let that officer know that the gun is not on your person. So when you're reaching to get your license, there is no miscommunication.
Tell us, you have some other tips that you would give residents to try and de-escalate anything like this?
Well, I'll just, if I can go back just a little bit, there was legislation introduced this year during the General Assembly during the session to have a instruction from new drivers when they get their driver's license on what to do if you're pulled over by a police officer. The legislation was defeated, and so we don't have it in place. We'll be working to get that in again next year. So new drivers know what happens when you do get pulled over, what you must do, what you may not do. One thing I would suggest is don't debate, whether you ran a stop sign or whether you were going 40 in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. That's what the courts are for. Comply now, and then you can grieve and argue later. We have policies in place, and most of our patrol cars have recording devices. So officers are to be courteous to the citizens. And if you feel that you've been disrespected or something's done improperly or wrong, there are procedures in place and processes in place for citizens to make complaints against that officer, and then we can review that tape and see what actually happened. But my suggestion is to comply now. We're not going to debate it on the street there. When we get to court, we can articulate what happened.
All right. Well, Percy Olson, thank you so much for joining us now.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time and insight.
Well, prosecutors drop a misconduct in office charge against Baltimore Police Lieutenant Brian Rice as his trial begins this morning. Rice is the fourth of 6 officers to stand trial in the arrest and death of 25-year-old Freddie Gray. Gray suffered a severe injury in the back of a police van in April 2015 and died a week later. Rice still faces 4 other charges, including involuntary manslaughter, second-degree assault, and reckless endangerment. He will also be prosecuted on a second misconduct in office charge.
The Maryland Transportation Authority begins phase 2 of a program aimed at reducing car crashes by targeting aggressive drivers. Smooth Operator is a joint effort between law enforcement agencies. Officials say police will increase highway patrols to crack down on unsafe behaviors such as speeding, tailgating, and dangerous lane changes. The second wave of Smooth Operator runs through July 16th.
A former school janitor pleads guilty to stealing more than 30 laptops. Kenneth Foster, who worked at Vansville Elementary in Beltsville, pleaded guilty to 1 count of a theft scheme. He was sentenced to 1 year in jail and ordered to pay $18,000 in restitution.
He steals 30 laptops from the elementary school, goes out on what he says is sick leave, but that turned out to be false, actually goes to North Carolina, gets a job with another school system in North Carolina while he is on some sort of sick or medical leave from his job here, and he steals 40 iPads from the school that he's working at in North Carolina. And then ultimately is selling all of them on Craigslist using his own cell phone number as the contact.
Foster resigned from the North Carolina School District in September 2014. He was charged with the theft of the iPads in early 2015. Once he concluded the legal process there, he was brought back to Prince George's to face separate theft charges. 18 of the 30 stolen laptops were recovered. And you are watching CTV News. I'm Patricia Vallone.
And I'm Denise Douglas.